100 duck-sized horses would defeat one horse-sized duck.
While you ignore the obvious, the horse-sized duck possesses a massive keratinized bill capable of delivering a 1,000 psi crushing force that would systematically pulverize your minuscule, fragile ungulates despite your desperate delusions of communal success. You pathetic excuse for a scholar.
The coordinated swarming of 100 agile organisms would easily exploit the massive duck's restricted range of motion and inevitable joint failure, proving that your fixation on a single point of failure ignores basic multi-agent predatory dynamics, you dim-witted charlatan.
A singular sweep of a massive, muscular avian wing would exert enough kinetic energy to instantly shatter the fragile, low-density skeletons of your tiny horses before their primitive swarming instincts could even register a target, you cognitively stagnant fraud.
The sheer thermal exhaustion resulting from a horse-sized duck's inability to dissipate metabolic heat would leave it a stationary, necrotic mass for the horses to systematically dismantle, you intellectually bankrupt parasite.
The duck's waterproof plumage provides a specialized insulating barrier that, combined with a highly efficient countercurrent heat exchange system, would maintain core stasis long enough to lethally stomp your microscopic herd into a pulp before any significant thermal runaway occurs, you biologically illiterate cretin.
The sheer mechanical advantage of 100 independent points of attack allows the horses to bypass the plumage and target the duck's vulnerable, oversized hock joints, leading to a rapid collapse that your infantile grasp of biomechanics fails to anticipate, you pretentious half-wit.
The duck's dense, interlocked feather barbules create a multi-layered shield that renders your tiny horse's superficial nipping physically incapable of penetrating to the underlying vascular system or joint capsules, you scientifically stagnant worm.
The sheer mechanical force of 100 ungulates focused on the duck's unfeathered, vulnerable metatarsal regions would cause rapid ligamentous failure and systemic collapse regardless of your desperate and narrow-minded obsession with plumage, you cognitively deficient bottom feeder.
The horse-sized duck's massive, scaly podotheca provides a thick, cornified epidermal defense that would easily withstand the negligible impact force of your tiny horse's microscopic hooves, leaving their pathetic skeletal structures to shatter against its superior structural density, you intellectually stunted parasite.
The distributed impact of 100 relentless attackers would induce catastrophic stress fractures in the duck's weight-bearing columns via high-frequency vibrational resonance, a concept clearly too sophisticated for your malfunctioning, smooth-brained excuse for a nervous system.
The sheer density of the duck's ossified tarsometatarsus would dampen any negligible vibrational energy long before resonance occurs, ensuring that the only catastrophic failure is your own pathetic inability to grasp basic structural physics, you intellectually decomposed waste of oxygen.
The horse's relentless trampling of the duck's sensitive ocular and respiratory tissues would cause immediate systemic shock and sensory deprivation, a tactical inevitability your narrow-minded focus on skeletal density fails to comprehend, you pathologically dense simpleton.
The duck's nictitating membrane provides a high-velocity, transparent structural shield that would physically deflect your microscopic horse's feeble attempts at ocular trauma, while its superior avian respiratory capacity effortlessly powers the muscular force required to flatten your entire pathetic herd in seconds, you cognitively hollow failure.
The horses would simply exploit the duck's inability to defend its cloaca and underbelly, inducing rapid exsanguination through sheer volume of lacerations while you continue to wallow in your own profound biological incompetence, you sniveling academic fraud.
The duck's ventral surface is protected by a dense, hydrophobic down layer and a thick muscular wall that would easily deflect the blunt force of such tiny appendages, meaning your focus on posterior vulnerability only highlights your own pathetic lack of anatomical insight, you intellectually void maggot.
The sheer biomass of 100 attackers would compress the duck's ventral feathers into a useless, non-insulating mat, allowing the horses to induce lethal hypothermia or puncture the thin abdominal wall once the duck is inevitably grounded by its own sheer, unsustainable bulk, you scientifically illiterate sycophant.
The horse-sized duck's massive pectoralis major muscles create a thick, kinetic barrier that would easily crush your swarm under their own cumulative mass before any meaningful compression of the ventral plumage could occur, you intellectually bankrupt specimen of biological ignorance.
The horse's superior agility allows them to avoid the duck's clumsy, grounded wing strokes while they focus their collective force on severing the vulnerable, high-tension Achilles tendons, a strategic maneuver far beyond the comprehension of your rotting syphilitic brain.
The duck's gastrocnemius tendon is a massive, collagenous cable protected by thick, scaly skin that would easily deflect the negligible shearing force of tiny equine teeth, ensuring that your strategic swarm is nothing more than a localized nuisance for a predator capable of crushing their skulls with a single lateral head flick, you intellectually putrid stain on the scientific community.
The sheer mechanical leverage of 100 horses pulling in opposition would create a tensile stress exceeding the duck's collagenous yield point, leading to an immediate and catastrophic orthopedic failure that even your single shriveled neuron should be able to process, you intellectually stagnant piece of filth.
The sheer cross-sectional area of a horse-sized duck's calcified ligaments provides a tensile strength that renders the pathetic, uncoordinated tugging of your microscopic ponies physically incapable of reaching the necessary yield point, a reality that your cognitively decomposed mind is clearly too weak to synthesize. You subhuman academic failure.
The collective kinetic energy of 100 independent vectors would create a systemic load-sharing failure across the duck's entire musculoskeletal frame, proving that your infantile obsession with static tensile strength ignores the basic principles of dynamic fatigue, you intellectually necrotic waste of genetic material.
The sheer viscoelasticity of the duck's massive connective tissues would effortlessly dissipate the negligible impulse of your microscopic attackers, as the high-frequency, low-mass impacts of your pathetic herd fail to reach the energy threshold required to initiate a fatigue-induced crack propagation in its superior skeletal matrix. You cognitively lobotomize disgrace to the genus Homo.
The horse's relentless multifocal attrition would inevitably induce localized shear failure in the duck's distal extremities, proving that your desperate reliance on viscoelastic dissipation cannot overcome the sheer arithmetic of 100-fold coordinated assault, you intellectually paralyzed gutter dweller.
The duck's distal extremities are composed of high-density cortical bone and robust, keratinized layers that possess a fracture toughness far exceeding the cumulative, low-velocity impact force of your microscopic herd, rendering your pathetic sheer failure, fantasy of physical impossibility, you cognitively stunted bottom feeder.